Good morning. Today we are doing EOF implementer call number 51. The agenda is issue number 1074. And so far we only have um, the standard tests and the standard agenda items. So probably spend a bit more time on test. There are some questions dribbling in on chat that we'll be sure to address. But first, let's start with client updates, starting alphabetically by people calling in. Alex, do you have any EVM1 team? Do you have anything on EVM1 for updates? Any EVM1 people can talk.
I think not much. The init code node validation is still in progress. Tests are, as I understand, on the are being worked on right now by Andre, and we've got also the max init code size validation in review. And I mean, basically awaiting resolving the execution spec tests dependency in CI. But it's also implemented. I don't know if there's anything else being worked on right now.
Okay. Dragon, REVM.
Uh, yeah. For the last week, I was like fixing bugs for RVN didn't pass test fixture 2. So I will fix that and I found all of them and I need just to clean up the PRs and merge them in. And after that, I hope that Foundry is going to work properly with the custom EOF Solidity compiler. So yeah, I'm basically working on that.
Okay. Yeah, you posted a question on test. That's something we need to discuss in tests, whether we continue to build off Cancun or move to Prague.
Yeah.
So we'll discuss that in that section. For Besu, the change from last week where we do the container sizes. Currently working on that. I made the mistake of doing a large refactor as part of it, and the large refactor went poorly. So I'm stepping back, doing a simple fix, and then can do the refactor independent to get that fix in. It's not terribly difficult fix. I know where to put the stuff in. So that's the only outstanding issue for Besu right now. Marius, Geth?
Yes. Um, Not much happened for me. I'm passing all of the code validation tests except for one, I think. But I couldn't be bothered. So, I'm not passing the state tests. There are a bunch of things that I haven't implemented yet. A bunch of code that I haven't implemented yet. So I will be working on this. Otherwise, I worked on these DOS things a bit, and I will be upstreaming them to Ethereum tests, so we have them whenever we need it. And yeah, that's it. I just needed some time to work on something different for a bit, but I will be coming back to it this week.
Out of curiosity, what was the one test that you don't pass right now?
I don't remember. I think it is. Oh, it has something to do with a max stack height for no. I think R jump max stack height or something. I don't remember. I can look it up. And I can send this in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, our jumps and stacks are sure there's just an off by one or a less than an equal, and it should be a less than, or it's always something silly like that has been my experience. And I've been trying to struggle with just one. Do we have anyone from Nethermind on the call? Do we have anyone from Ethereum JS? Are there any other mainline EVM clients I have not asked about? Okay. Next question would be for compiler updates. Do we have anyone from Solidity on the call? No. Charles, do you have anything this week for Viper? No updates from Viper. Okay. The Solidity POC, any significant changes in the last week, or is it still just doing fine?
So maybe an update from Epsilon. Many people were either off last week or off this week. So that's why the lack of response on some of these. I don't know if Radek made any more progress on the Solidity branch, but we're looking at doing more benchmarks, like gas and size benchmarks with popular contracts. And one of them, we haven't completed it, but one of them is a P256 verifier, which uses significant gas, like 330K. So hopefully that, the number will be less with EOF.
Cool. Any other compiler updates? Cool. Spec updates. We don't have any spec updates this week. I'm hopeful we may have had our last major spec update, although Marius wants to talk about updating EOF in the future. Is it okay if we do testing and then loop back to that question, Marius?
Sure.
Okay. So let's go to testing. Anything from the testing team they want to discuss or ask questions about before we go to the EOF, Prog EOF question?
Not that much major things. We've been reviewing the PR stuff and just trying to merge the tests. I think one question was related to one of the code size tests that we have, and there's actually an open PR for that that implements code size. So my question is, I think this we should have like two types of tests for the code size and validation. And I think when we try to do some oversized containers, I think that should belong into the EOF test fixture type. And for the current for the creation of EOF containers and the validation that the containers are not oversized, we should use the state test format. I placed a comment in the PR, but I think we should maybe async in the PR. We should just get this discussion just to know that we are in sync with the way that we are testing oversized containers.
Yeah, so I responded to. Oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I responded to this question. This PR in particular just had a very specific tests for an addition to the spec, which is the max init code size EOF validation time check. And I think we still need to fill the gaps in coverage and in general creation state tests. It's like kind of a separate story, but agreed that we should test on both fronts.
All right. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, and there's another PR from the testing side is this one. It's related to EOF because we now have the ability to automatically calculate the max stack height in the code that we generate for tests, which means that we can in theory, if the code for any previous tests, I mean pre-Cancun and all that stuff, if we have code that we use to test any other functionality like self-destruct, like pre-compiles, etc., we can now update this automatically to generate a container in theory, if it doesn't call or use any of the deprecated opcodes. That's something else that we have to figure out. But for the time being, with this PR, the max stack height would not be a blocker to automatically convert something into the EOF container. So yeah, This PR is mainly test changes and that are unrelated to EOF, but I think it will be helpful for EOF. Yep.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
This is good stuff, right?
This will make testing EOF v1 and legacy opcodes, make sure they operate the same, a lot easier. Cool.
I have to say it's not perfect though, because there are some things that we simply cannot predict. For example, when you use call F into another code section that contains more outputs or modifies the amount of outputs that it has, that causes some issues with this. But
Right.
as you can see, most of the max stack height lines are removed from the EOF tests.
Right. But legacy is not going to be doing call F, so we should be fine there for what I see its greatest value. So awesome. This looks great. Makes writing tests a lot easier.
Yeah, and as you can see, there were some instances where I think the value was incorrect, and this thing caught the difference. So I think
Yeah.
it's beneficial that we don't have to calculate this manually, and we just let this tool do its job, and we only hard code this value if absolutely necessary. But
Yeah, that fixed me. I mean, if the test is to get it wrong, of course we have to get it wrong in the code, but yeah, that makes it easier.
and overall, it's just a great addition to the testing framework. Yeah, it has other benefits also, but yeah, EOF is going to be the main beneficiary for this, I think.
Cool.
And I
Any
think
other?
that's it from me.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Dragon brought up an issue that's kind of related to another issue. There's a discussion of starting a separate DevNet before we go into the full prog DevNet series March that is just EOF, to kind of try and shake out things before we go into full DevNet mode. And one of the questions is whether we build off of Cancun and whether we build off of prog. And if we're going to build off of prog, that leaks into reference tests, the East tests, because do we build off of Cancun or do we build off of prog? One issue I've seen is when we do prog tests, all the state tests and all of the other tests are going to start introducing changes to things like the block hash stored, which will produce different state root hashes. They're not easily discernible unless you know to expect them from a state test, because you just get a different hash and you are missing the OX25, et cetera, class that is storing the block hash. So that's one issue that I've seen between the fixtures that EVM1 creates and BASIC creates, and I'm not sure who's necessarily correct in that case. Barnabas, we were just talking about testnets, so you joined right at the right time.
How can I help?
We were having the discussion about whether we build off of prog or Cancun, and I was just teeing up the issues around it. And one of the things that leaks in, if we're going to build prog EOF instead of Cancun EOF, that we should have reference tests require things to be integrated with prog EOF. And I was doing a temperature check to see what other client teams felt about bringing in all the prog stuff into their EOF work.
Last week, if I remember correctly, we discussed that we would try to put it on right after prog. So it would be prog time, then prog EOF time to
Yep.
trigger it.
Just to say that's something that I said, but it depends on other teams what's the best for them. For red side, it's it would be best if EOF is included after prog. Basically, you have prog EOF hard fork, but I can make it work even if it is on top of the Cancun. It depends just what's easier for the people.
I think
That
it's just
depends
a
on
question
clients
of
and testing.
when we want to test. Because if we want to test ASAP, then probably makes sense to have it top of Cancun and just stop all the merging and just get up and running. But if we can wait another week or two, then we can just probably have it on top of Prague.
Yeah.
Ask Marius. Go ahead.
From the reference test side, I think the only change, I mean, on the actual test code, the only change that we need to do is just one line, basically. But the problem, the blocker, is the transition tool. So we need a transition tool that supports Prague and also EOF. So that's our blocker for testing.
Do we need to have the activation trigger with Prague EOF time? Can't we not do just EOF time and just have it activated independently of Prague?
At least the way Besu set up, all forks have a parent and they inherit all things that are activated in the parent. So I have a PR set on the side that is a Cancun EOF that activates Cancun and adds the EOF stuff on top of it. So that was, one option to go with the Cancun EOF. Is we can't, it's not easy for Besu just to turn on a random feature. I don't know what the other client team setup is for theirs.
It's similar setup in REVM. Yeah, Red has a little bit different setup, but for REVM it's a lot easier and it was faster to have just one gate, let's say. We can basically have two hard forks, one for Cancun EOF and one for Prague EOF, where the Cancun EOF will be on top of the Cancun, and second one on top of the Prague. I would like to have just one of those because it's not. It seems like I could basically add both of those, but we need just to decide what's easier. I have a little bit more preference on Prague EOF, but because Prague AIP seems mostly like it required just like 7702. And that was it. And that's like different transactions. So if we're not setting different transactions, we're not like having collision between EOF and 7702. And precompilers from DevNet zeros and everything changes from DevNet zero seems like in okay state.
Yeah, I looked at the 7702 for PR that the rest of the Besu team's working on for 7702, and it touched like one line in the EOF, and that was just the gas calculator to add a constant. So yeah, 7702 is pretty orthogonal to EOF. And because I pinged Marius last week, his opinion on it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he could go either way and doesn't have a strong preference. So,
would it be reasonable to ask each client team to have then two activation possibilities, Cancun EOF and Prague EOF? And then we could test right away with Cancun EOF, and then whenever Prague EOF rebase is done, then we can just deprecate the Cancun EOF time.
I'm okay with that.
I don't know how much extra time that take, but like if it's very easy to do, and then we could have like a DevNet up and running by the end of the week, then it might be worth it. Assuming that the EOF implementation is actually done by all the different teams.
Let's go to the test metric, the matrix, and I'm not sure. Is this up to? This isn't up to date. This is the update that's going out.
PR. I've just opened a PR with an update.
Yeah, this is the
need
PR.
to update those.
The background colors have updates. So I don't think. I mean, we could get maybe Revum and Besu by the end of the week, possibly. But if it's not the end of this week, the next target would be next week or the week after. Is that what I'm hearing from Barnabas?
I mean, I don't know how long the rebase is planned to be for gas, for example, or for Nethermind. So if it's just 1 or 2 weeks to rebase, then it might not worth it to add the Cancun EOF to it and just go with Prague EOF from the get-go. So do we have any word from Marius maybe? How is gas doing?
It kind of depends on it can go pretty fast. It can also take a long time. I started reviewing the first Prague Prague PR, and the problem with the way we did Prague is that we have a bunch of PRs building on top of each other. So we have 6110, 7,000.
7,002.
Yeah. And then the DevNet, those are kind of 3 PRs built on top of each other. So we need to go through them one by one and match them one by one. And there are some issues with 6110 because we need to unmarshal the deposits. And that was actually something that I wanted to ask other client devs about, how they are doing the unmarshalling of the deposits. And what happens if they fail. But probably a bit different context than we're discussing right now. So I will keep that to another call. Either way, I guess we can probably do 2 or 3 weeks. That would be my guess.
And how long would it be if you would need to add another activation time, like Cancun EOF?
The problem is that we don't have any Prague EOF activation in yet, so it would take me maybe a day or 2, but that code is just going to be thrown away. So
it's not, so it's not worth it, you think?
I would say it's not that, not really worth it.
Okay. So should we work forward based on a Prague EOF DevNet next week, probably then? Or the week after?
Sounds like
And
the
join when
week
we
after
can.
is probably more, It
Okay.
sounds like the week after is a bit more reasonable. It depends on when the rebase is done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Base is ready to go when we need it. So I think that we should be our target for when we launch a DevNet. It'd be great to launch the DevNet with everyone, but other clients joining late is pretty standard for DevNets. So
I mean, we can do kurtosis tests right away, like today even. I
okay,
just have
that
to
would
add
be.
I could add like 1 flag. Okay, maybe not today, but tomorrow it's like 6 p.m. already here. But
Yeah, don't do it today.
yeah, I could add the Cancun EOF time as the activation epoch for our Genesis generator tool, and then I can add that to the Ethereum package, and then we can do local kurtosis stats by tomorrow.
Basically, we need to get our Cancun EOF PR merged, but I could do that.
Yeah.
We still have no way of actually testing it, right? Of triggering EOF stuff on.
We would need to hand create.
Kurtosis.
Oh, kurtosis. Can you send random transactions inside of kurtosis? Does it expose the ports to clients?
Yep.
But
so what we would need to do is update the xfuzz maybe to do EOF transactions.
But there's no way of doing EOF transactions, right? We would need an EOF contract in the Genesis.
No, 7698 should provide a way to introduce EOF transactions. You take a create transaction, you put your EF code in there, and you put your aux data after your EOF container. Not your aux data, your input data. So that's
Okay.
7698 is how you bring EOF into an existing system just through a regular old create transaction.
And you have the Solidity POC to help you with this, because this is what Solidity POC uses to deploy.
I see. Okay.
We can deploy on Uniswap. What else we tested? I don't remember. ENS, I think.
Uniswap ENS. It might be entertaining to try the Open Zeppelin contracts.
I do hope that we'll integrate it inside Foundry, so it's like we'll have gas and everything around it.
Do you plan to have Foundry integrated in soon?
Yeah. The problem was RVM had some bugs, so I just like found the last one. I need to clean up those PRs, merge those, and like propagate the changes to Foundry. We started testing it, have some integration with it, and yeah, it is not that. Yeah, it is easy to do.
Last week I've been working on last couple of weeks I've been working on some optimism stuff to have optimism roll up on top of the Ethereum package, so we could potentially check if we could roll out a EOF style contract deployment with optimism stack.
Yeah, happy OP Wrath. OP base is not ready to go yet.
Oh, yeah, with OP Wrath. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yep. That's amazing, to be honest.
Yeah, someone from OP pinged me on Twitter. I should probably let them know that that's a possibility that might happen this next week.
Yeah. I mean, that assumes that the Solidity code is changed to be compatible with EOF code. I'm not sure if anyone would be quick enough to do that, because I have no idea what any of that means.
So
what?
Go ahead.
Yep. It's in like proof of concept, but it's like working. That's how the stats for the Uniswap contract and ENS are basically made.
Right. So to activate the EOF, do we need to have some contract deployed or nothing special?
Nothing special.
Okay. So
what happens is
that.
So what happens right now is when a create transaction sees EF of any way, shape, or form at the beginning as the first byte, rejects the transaction. So 7698, if it says EF00 and it's a valid container with possibly some init code overhang, then it'll deploy an EOF contract. So that's how you bring EOF contracts into the system, is through the create transaction or through the Genesis file. So we don't need anything in the Genesis file for us to do validation.
Okay, sounds good.
So at least we can turn it on and see if smoke comes out. So that's good news. So yeah, keep us posted. Don't bash your head in if it's not working too well. Just let us know it fails.
Yeah, we have a new interop chat on Ether. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that.
Is it in the testing group or is it in a different group?
Yeah, it should be in the testing group. So we have an EOF, specifically EOF testing within the testing group.
Yeah. So let's keep those updates in the probably EOF testing group would probably be the right place.
Yep.
Cool beans.
All right, let me know if you have a Bezu branch ready to go with the activation time. Yeah, Cancun EOF time activation trigger.
Okay, I'll put that on my to-do list. I haven't checked in. I'll publish a PR.
What would be the trigger for Nethermind, by the way? Would it be all the different EIPs, or would it be the one big EIP?
Do you have anybody from Nethermind?
That I saw Ivan, yeah.
Here.
Ivan's here, yeah.
We don't have a lot of updates. We are working on EIP 7698, and we are trying to implement it and test it.
My question was, what would trigger EOF in the chain spec? Would it be all the different EIPs timestamp, transition timestamp, or would it be something else?
I guess, yeah, we'll go with the same timestamp for all EIPs, for all EOF EIPs.
So I would need to define all the different EIPs in the Genesis chain spec.
Oh, you mean like a separate EIP for each change, or one big one for the full EOF? I don't get the question.
It doesn't
Because-
exist right now.
For us, we have just one field we have to set true for EOF to be full, like activated completely.
Yeah,
And
but
what
how
is
do
that
you
field?
do that? Yeah, what is the field name? That's my question.
Huh?
Is it activating 7692 or is it a different field name?
Oh, its name is activate. Let me check. I don't remember exactly the name, but I think it's release spec. Okay. Is EOF enabled?
EOF enable. Awesome.
EOF enabled timestamp? Or
We are just calling it is EOF enabled, and
If we're enabling
Like
a Genesis, that should be fine.
I don't want to enable that Genesis. I want
Oh,
fork transition.
that's not fine then.
I do want
Okay.
to test the fork transition for sure. So enabling it in Genesis makes little testing on. So I want to be able to send transactions before the fork, and maybe in epoch 2 or 3 to test if you can transition nicely.
Okay. Spec provider. I don't think we added that one yet.
Okay, can you please add that then? A way for me to activate at a specific time
Oh, okay.
timestamp.
Yeah. What do you suggest I call it?
Isn't there a mega EIP for EOF?
Yeah, 7692.
600.
Okay, then I will call it EIP 7692 transition, and whatever value you provide it will be used.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let's do that then.
Cool.
7692. Copy. Paste.
Tomorrow's all core devs execution, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any other testing updates before we go to other items? Okay. So one thing I'm going to propose, not this week, but next week we start doing, is we switch to every other week live calls, and we are going to do a lot more async stuff like getting the dev nets up and running and dealing with bugs. The reason I remember us going to the weekly calls is we had a lot of spec issues that we needed a lot of quick iteration on. We have no spec issues this week, so I think this is the right time to consider going back to the every other week cadence, which I think is a much more sustainable cadence. I know that's what Vertical Trees does, and that's what a lot of the other breakout rooms do, is every other week. So we would still meet next week, but after next week, we would meet every other week on the weeks where ACDE is not on. What are people's opinions on that?
Seems reasonable.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. So if there's no objection, we'll start going to every other week starting next week we'll meet, and then in 2 weeks we'll have it off. So this would be the last off week call is the way we could look at it. Cool. Any other questions or comments or items that need to be discussed before we end the meeting?
Yes, I wanted to quickly discuss upgradability.
Upgradability. Yes, I forgot about that. That's why I always ask for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing that I kind of noticed when thinking about our stack validation is if we add something to it, we will completely break it. And so if we ever decide to add a new opcode to EOF, any opcode, we will break the second code validation, right? And so we would need to have a separate version for every hard fork. My question is, have people already thought about this? And if so, how do they handle it when designing their code? Because right now, my code for the stack validation, it's, I don't know, 150 lines. For the code validation, it's 150 lines. For the stack validation, it's 200 lines. And those are two different functions. But if I would have to version them, I would need to basically make a copy of it. Everything else would be pretty horrible. So my question would be, have other people thought about how they would like to do this? And if so, if there are any better ideas than just copying 350 lines of code?
So I've thought about it a bit. In Besu, in our code, we have the notion of a max EOF version. And that goes along with my mental model of how I expect EOF versions to evolve. If you'd imagine EOF v1 being a set of all possible contracts that are valid, any forward compatible change would take code that was in the invalid set and move it into the valid set. And anything that's in the valid set would not become invalid. So if there's something that is a valid v1 contract, if we do make a change that makes it invalid, we now have EOF v major 2. But if we have a set of valid contracts and we turn on opcodes, we now have EOF v11. And I might encode it internally as 1, 2, 3. Java's in their class file format, they just monotonically increase it. So I think they're version 55 for their compatibility, even though they're only on Java 21, because they would increment it whenever there is some sort of a change. And like 55 could only go back to 51 for compatibility. There's kind of a matrix on there. But my thought is that we would take one set of validation rules for EOF of V1, and for certain rules, we would also say, like, let's say we're adding in what's an opcode? EXT data copy. So we would put in another thing. It's like, well, if EOF version is greater than 2, and this would be EOF minor version in that case, or greater than 1, or whatever value it is. But it's, version 2 is when we're bringing it in. When I would check that, I would check that it's there, and if the maximum EOF version is 2. So when we do the validation function, we would pass in a parameter saying what our maximum EOF version is. So in Besu, we would still have one code block that would validate all the code and validate all the stack. But if we're validating a rule that was relaxed for V2, we would need to have that flag to set it. And by relaxed, typically it would say include these opcodes and then necessarily do the opcode validation. I'm not anticipating any changes to stack validation apart from what the opcodes bring in with them. But in theory, we might just say EOF version 3, YOLO on stack, all stacks are valid. So we could just say if EOF version is 3, pass it on. That's sorry about that. I lost my microphone. But that's my perception on it, is that the future versions relaxations would be triggered by flags that we passed it as a function. And I've already got that written into the EVM spec in Besu so that we got these things built in. That's my mental model. So we don't have to copy code validation and copy stack validation for every major version going forward. Otherwise, that's going to be a rich source of bugs.
Yeah, makes sense. But it's only really clean, I think, for like very easy rules, right? Like if we I don't know, if we relax the backward jump rule or whatever, then it would be very hard to do that as a flag.
Right.
But
So
I
that,
guess, yeah.
that does limit some of our forward things we could add, which I don't see large changes on the rules and stack validation going forward.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, that's yeah. It makes sense. Thanks. Now I know how I'm going to maybe do it in the future. I don't think I will implement it now because it's not needed, but yeah, it makes it easier to implement it in the future for sure. Yeah, that was it.
All right. Any other topics of discussion or comments or question? All right. If not, see everyone back in 7 days and see most of us tomorrow on ACD. Thanks for calling in.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.